Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this. I'm Taylor Haase. Welcome to another episode of Podcast on Fifth Ave. Normally I'm joined by Danny Shirey, our other Penguins writer at DK Pittsburgh Sports. Danny, unavailable this week. I believe he's taking some time to binge watch Keenan and Kel. He's been past episodes with us. So instead of taking the week off, I figured I'd look for someone to sign to a PTO to join us as a co-host for this week. Very pleased to be joined by former captain of the Cornell hockey team, went on to play in the ECHL for your Wheeling Nailers, as well as Atlanta, Manchester, Rapid City, Indy, overseas in Sweden, Slovakia, Denmark, most recently, a point-per-game all-star in Japan and the Asia League. Alex Rauter, thank you for joining us. How are you doing? And how's that intro?
Wow, that was amazing. Oh my God. I'm honored to be here, Taylor.
And I didn't even mention the penalty shot goal at MSG.
I get made fun of that more than anything ever. It's hilarious. It's like everyone at school would just love to oh, did you ever get a penalty shot? And I'm like, come on.
Career highlight.
It was one of them. But yeah, playing for the Nailers, that's like one of my main sticking points when people are like, oh, you play hockey? I was like, yeah, I played for the Wheeling Nailers. And I don't know if that's because of Biz or whatever, but everyone knows who the Nailers are.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to talk about some just general hockey stuff this episode of our Penguins podcast. We'll get into the Penguins, but I mean the big news in the NHL this week, it has to be Jordan Binnington. I don't know. You call them tantrums and antics. I feel like this is like the fourth or the fifth thing this season alone he's gotten into. So it happened earlier this week. St. Louis, they're playing Minnesota. So it started. The Blues are up 3-1. The Wild scored three, quick ones on Binnington to take the lead. He challenged the Minnesota bench, and that alone, I'm like, this is hilarious, like peak Binnington. But then it got worse. So the Blues did tie it back up, and then Minnesota's Ryan Hartman, he scored. And as he's celebrating, he clips Binnington's pads, and that was all it took. Binnington, the live angle of it is so funny, just Binnington coming to the frame, sucker punching Ryan Hartman. And then Fleury challenging him to a fight. Binnington got tossed. And then Greiss coming in, Goligoski promptly scores on a breakaway. Goligoski, of all people. One part of it, Binnington, as he's getting tossed, he's hyping the crowd up like an absolute clown. And then, when Goligoski scores, he does that, the little thing to mock him. Just what did you think of this? And how robbed were we that the refs did not let Fleury fight Binnington?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's so much to unpack here. But I think it's so important, too, to note that I think didn't Hartman have either a breakaway? Yeah, Hartman had a breakaway in the first, and Binnington actually made a really good save. He just snagged him, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Binnington he's having a bad year, but he looks better, and then just plummets.
Yeah, I wish so bad we could have seen Fleury actually fight him. There's no more I guess polarizing on opposite sides how Fleury is universally loved, and Binnington. Is he one of the best villains in the NHL at this point, would you say?
Well, it's hilarious because isn't he 6 feet tall? It would have been a good goalie fight just in the sense that they're similar heights, and they're small. It's not we got Pecorine going after somebody.
Yeah, I feel Fleury's pure chaotic energy would have given him a little edge there. But Binnington, he's a villain, but I think Binnington in his head thinks that he's Ron Hextall or Patrick Waugh, in their peaks when they're, getting into it. But Binnington, he just comes off as a baby, does he not?
Yeah, well, he's looking for it. He's always going into these things looking for it. And even this could be a hot take, but I kind of thought he saw Hartman coming, because of however the goal happened, and then he kind of pushed his foot. His pad kind of extends, and Hartman, you can't even call it a clip. It was barely even touched him. And he thought about it too. Binnington's oh, we're down 5-4. I might as well just go crazy.
Yeah, and Fleury. So Fleury was mic'd up for that game. What a treat! Minnesota, they posted the clip, and Fleury even says he's pleading with the ref as the ref is holding him back. He's look, this guy's trying to fight all the time.
Give him one.
Yeah, Fleury, he's also like, no, it'll be good, it'll be good, like it'll be fun. Like I loved it how he was like, but I mean, you go back when he was challenging the Minnesota bench after allowing the 3 quick ones. Right away, Binnington, at that point, he's already rattled. It would be so easy to get him off his game at that point. Is
I
that
don't
right?
know why he does that. Like you were saying, he's done it a few times this year, and it's like it's just what are you doing? You have one job, like just stop the puck. That's like all you got to do.
Well, and that's what Berube said. Like his coach, one of the last, his big moments this season, it was in Pittsburgh. So it was a dirty. He clotheslined Jason Zucker. He's behind the net.
Oh
Jason
yeah.
Zucker's
I saw that. Yeah.
And he sticks out his blocker. Very dangerous. Zucker got hurt, went to the locker room. Penguins score a couple in the meantime. Zucker does come back. Zucker ultimately scores the goal that gets Binnington chased. But then as Binnington's, he gets pulled. As he's leaving the ice, he's challenging the Penguins bench. He's like running his mouth the whole time. And Zucker, I still see the GIF on Twitter on like a daily basis of Zucker just like shrugging at him, like not giving into it. But I mean, after that game, and at that point, Binnington's already out of the game in Pittsburgh. Berube said, I have the quote, he said, "It's got to stop. It doesn't help anything. Just play goal. Stop the puck."
Yeah.
And I mean, at this point, in Pittsburgh, he's done. But in the St. Louis, Minnesota game, he wasn't getting yanked. He got himself thrown out of the game. They lost. Yeah. I think the final score was like 8-5.
Yeah, I mean that's actually a good point too. I wonder if he just wanted out. Maybe he just like didn't want to play anymore.
Yeah, well, it's like had he not gotten him, because like I said, he gets tossed. Grice comes in, Goligoski scores on a breakaway, and then things.
A sick goal, by the way. When did backhand 5-hole come back into the league? I thought that like took a hiatus for a couple years.
How old is Goligoski at this point? he played for the Penguins like I was gonna say he was a good Penguin.
Yeah. Hey, he's still got it. You give those shutdown D-men some puck time, they could do anything.
Yeah, but I mean, if Binnington doesn't have his little hissy fit and get himself tossed, maybe he stays in the game, and maybe Minnesota doesn't win 8-5. Like his teammates have to be sick of him, do they not?
I was thinking the same thing, and then I wonder if it's kind of like an ego thing because he didn't play in the coast for that long. But I wonder, like, he had a pretty steep rise, like he was like 0 NHL playoff, but he didn't win the Conn Smythe, right? O'Reilly won the Conn Smythe.
He was, and I remember he was the runner-up. He was the runner-up for what was it, the Calder his year, and I remember he was like.
So like he's going 0 to 100 so quick, and then now the Blues are kind of like declining. So yeah, his head must just be in a blender.
Yeah, they have. I think it's 4 guys left from the 2019 team, and one of them was the one that he hadn't even been around the whole time. I can't remember who it was, but they traded him and then reacquired him. So the Blues.
Sammy Blais.
Yeah, and I mean, the Blues, they're not in a good situation. If you're claiming Kasperi Kapanen off waivers, like that's going to help you. That's not.
There was somebody who was in the league, one of the GMs this year, where they were like, just acquiring high picks. That's all you're doing, right? Was he a first rounder, Kasperi Kapanen?
Yeah, and I mean, the last first round pick that the Penguins have drafted, who has played for St. Poulin played a couple games, but for a while, Kapanen was like the last. They took him in 2014. So, wow. First round pick.
Almost a decade ago. The Pens, they don't need it. Sidney Crosby is an ageless wonder.
He is. We'll probably get into Penguins talk too, but like that's what people talking about, like the first round picks. Absolutely trade them away because like they're not going to help you now. If you use your first round pick, like the Penguins held on to it. I mean, I guess they could still trade it like before the draft, but whoever you pick with that first round pick, by the time that player makes the NHL, if he does, and if it's for the Penguins, Malkin is going to be on like a fishing boat somewhere in Florida, totally out of the game. Crosby's going to be doing Crosby's probably still going to be around, but the Penguins are going to be so bad, you might as well just trade your picks. Not do this. You gotta get bad, and you gotta get bad fast. Not do this like halfway thing. That I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, yeah, to go back to the Blues, yeah, like if they want to be doing the get bad quick thing, they're doing it the right way because
Mm-hmm.
they're just, I hate to speak ill of them, but yeah, they got old so fast, and just the goaltending isn't there, and it's a tough league.
Yeah. Binnington, I did mention he did get suspended 2 games for his little antics. The
Okay.
Blues and the Wild do play each other one more time this season. I'm going to be looking forward to that,
Oh,
just to see how that
absolutely.
plays out.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
wait, did we ever get official like statement from the refs on why it was broken up, or like any expert official rulings?
No, but I just, because when was the last time we've seen a legitimate goalie fight in the NHL? I think so. This came up with Casey DeSmith when the Penguins were in Florida a couple games ago.
Hmm.
Zucker ran into Bobrovsky. Like, Bobrovsky came out to play the puck. Zucker hit him. Bobrovsky is down. Bobrovsky got right up, went after Zucker. And Bobrovsky is on top of Zucker. Now, the only, if you're a skater, you can't fight Bobrovsky. Casey was, he said afterwards he was thinking about coming down there
Hmm.
and challenging Bobrovsky, but he said the officials held him back. And then he said he thinks that there's like a league like directive to the officials, like, don't let goalie fights happen.
Yeah, that can make sense.
Yeah, which is just too bad because
Because that's what everybody wants to see.
right, and I feel like we've gotten a couple in like the AHL recently, or like we almost got one.
Mhm.
ECHL may still happen. Wheeling just had one.
Well, yeah,
Um,
was that when Brad Barone was the goalie for the Nailers?
yeah, just a couple games ago, he got beat bad. Like, it wasn't a good fight at all.
He's
But
not a big guy, but he's a phenomenal human being, Brad Barone. Let me tell you, I love that guy.
not a great fighter. We're gonna,
He just stops the puck. That's his thing. Maybe him and Binnington could train together and form some kind of mega goalie. Just one who stops the puck and one who has the antics.
exactly. We're gonna take a break now. We're gonna come back. We're gonna talk about rule changes and a bunch of other stuff around the league. So stay with us. All right, and we are back. And now, when I texted you to try to get you to fill in on the podcast for me, one of the first things you said, you're like, "Oh, actually, we got to talk about plus minus. I have a theory." And I was like, "All right, I'm intrigued." And then we got into talking about it, and we're going to use this segment. We're going to talk about rule changes that we'd make, or changes to stats, stuff like that, if we were in charge. And what's your plus minus theory?
I have some hot takes on plus minus, mainly because this year in the Asia League, they just do every situation as if it's the same. So I don't know. I don't know if there's other leagues that do that. I mean, I think in the old days that's how it was, but then I forget whenever the NHL modernized it. But yeah, like I have to go plus this year because I'm just soaking minuses on the PK all the time. But actually, it kind of got me thinking, Taylor. There's an empty net goal. Everyone gets a plus, everyone gets a minus, but it's 6-on-5, and it doesn't go against the goalie's goals against.
Mm-hmm.
So then, how does that even? That's why I hate it.
Yeah. So when we were talking about this, I like looked into it. So there's a stat. I don't know where you'd even like find it, like the actual results of it, or like I don't think you'd see it on the NHL. But it's just something people have come up with called situational plus minus, where it is like what you said, you get it whether, all situations, but it's weighted. So it's not going to be an even number. And basically it's like you divide it by like the number of players on the ice. So if it's like a 6-on-5 or like a power play, it's a plus, but it's not like as much of a plus. But like if you score short-handed, then that's like more of a plus. Would that not make more sense?
That would be sweet. Like if you score a shorty when you're 5-on-3, you get like plus almost 2.
Yeah.
That would be pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, Joel, the stat, even if we're weighting it, plus minus in general, kind of sucks. Like because it doesn't really tell you anything. I like a lot of like advanced stats, like on ice stuff like that. It'll be written in like percentages. Like it tells you a little more, or like rates. Is the big thing because like a plus minus. So you're just talking about the Asia League. Your plus minus this year was 0. that, like, when you're out there, is it just like totally low event hockey, nothing's happening, or are you like scoring every shift, but you're also like a huge liability? I don't know. You're a zero.
Wow. Yeah. Well, when you put it that way, that makes me really rethink my entire hockey career in a nutshell. You're right. Yeah. Plus minus, it isn't that indicative, but I think by the end of the year, it's usually pretty cool. Like when you see someone, I don't even know who is it. McDavid? No, McDavid's not even that much plus. It's probably like,
Well, it's
do you know who it is off the top? Yeah. Do you know who it is off the top of your head?
No, but I mean, a lot of times it's also like defensemen who just are out there a lot.
Yeah, but like I don't know. I feel like it's usually a crazy, it's someone not that you wouldn't expect, but it's just more like, wow, like that's a pretty interesting, like, stat to see.
Yeah. Whenever like I use rates primarily when I'm using like an advanced stat, like shots, shot attempts,
goals 60.
Yeah, no, that's what it is, because I feel like that gives you a better idea of what's actually happening and like the frequency at which something's happening. Because like you said, like zero, it could be totally low event hockey, or it could be like crazy in either direction. It could be like complete opposite ends, and you really don't know.
Well, not to get off topic, but I need to plug the Grits a little bit. My Japanese team. When we win, we would win. We have a couple 5-1 wins, some 5-2 domination. I'm plus 3 or 4. Everything's great. But then when we lose, like we knew how to lose. Unfortunately, we had a couple 7-1, 9-2. It's tough to say plus in that environment. But okay, I pulled up the plus minus. If I told you what team they were from, do you think you could guess that sorry, I should rephrase. 3 of the top 4 are from the same team, and if I told you the team, do you could think you could guess them?
Is it Boston?
Yes.
Well, because Boston's like overall goal differential is like plus 100, and like everyone else, like the next closest few are like plus 50. I don't know if I could guess, because I don't know, because like we're saying, like power play, I don't know like who's scoring like even strength, and who's scoring like I haven't seen a whole lot of Boston, but no, just
okay.
Give us the numbers. Who is it?
All right, yeah, it's Hampus Lindholm is plus 41 in 66 games.
I wouldn't have guessed. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like I'm saying, there's a couple. Usually, every year the plus minus, you're like, wow.
Who are the other Bruins?
And then the other one is Grizzlick.
Okay.
And then Brandon Carlo, and then wow, this one is totally. I didn't even like look at the third guy is Thomas Tatar on the Devils.
Yeah, like you said,
which like
guys you wouldn't think of.
Yeah, like he's having a good year, and for him to only he has 3 power play points, but he has 40 points. So yeah, this guy, he's doing the work.
So my rule changes. I have 2, and they're kind of connected.
I like it.
It's about challenging what's you're allowed to challenge. This is something. The first one is something that might happen. They talked about it. I think it's the GM meetings that just happened, and Gary Bettman talks after. And something they're looking at is the ability to review high sticks, like at the penalty, and potentially take it back. Right now, you can, if it's a double minor, you can review it, take it back to just a minor, but you can't take it back entirely with a review. I would like to see it be possible to review it and remove the penalty entirely. I feel like, because the last thing fans want are more reviews, but also I feel like this is not something that comes up often enough that it's going to slow the game down, because there are situations where 2 players come together and a player might jerk his head back and it looks like he got hit, but he really didn't get hit. And the one that comes to mind, I don't know if you saw it, the first game the Joseph brothers played against each other this season. P.O. On the Penguins, and then Matthew on Ottawa. They collide, and then they come together and they both kind of jerk their head back, and they both get high sticking penalties on each other. Like they get called for high sticking each other. But you go back and you rewatch the video. P.O. absolutely did high stick Matthew, but it was P.O.'s own stick that hit his own face. Matthew should not have gotten a penalty. And when it happens and they're getting taken to the box, they're both laughing about it, but then they re-show it on the video board, and Matthew realizes he didn't actually high stick PO, and he's pissed. And PO even admitted after the game, like, yeah, I hit myself in the face. Matthew was still pissed after the game. He's like, that was not a penalty. That should not have been a penalty. But something like that. I mean, with that...
Yeah. Well, and especially like majors.
Yeah. If you're going to review any kind of penalty, I feel like this is one that makes sense because it's something where it's an issue very infrequently. But
yeah, and it's all, and because it can contribute so big. Like if it's a high stick, it's usually a double minor. Yeah. And then if it's a major, what was that playoff game? Was it Vegas, San Jose a couple years ago where they were down like 5-1 or 4-1, and then they scored 4 on the 5-minute major?
That sounds right. Yeah, so that's something that I would like to see high sticks be reviewable.
Yeah, I like that. Shouldn't there be, like, because they still have the situation room in Toronto, right, going over every goal? How do they not have situation room number 2 down the hallway, like going over every penalty?
Yeah, put them in like the coat closet down the hallway.
Well, you know, Gary's talking about all this revenue that the NHL's making. Pay somebody, Gare. Come on, Cornell alumni. You know, he knows how to spread it around.
So my other thing is related to challenges. So it used to be in the NHL that, you know, a coach challenges a goal. If you get it wrong, you lose your timeout. And then if you didn't have a timeout, if you challenge a second one, you got it wrong, then it's a penalty. Right now, so they changed the rule a couple years ago. Now it's a penalty every time if you get it wrong. Oh. Which, like, then the idea is obviously trying to reduce the number of challenges, but then I also feel like it's up the number of goals that shouldn't have counted because the penalty is too steep now. Like, coaches are like so afraid because, you know, if you challenge, you get it wrong. Not only does that goal count, but now you're on the penalty kill right away.
That's a huge momentum shift.
Everyone's rested too because everyone just sat through a video review, and, you know, first unit guys are all ready. Sullivan talks about this constantly, how he hates the rule. He's like said, like, you know, you should want to get it right, and if you get it right, and I mean when you lost a timeout, that's enough of a penalty. That's a deterrent, losing your timeout. Especially, you know, if you're challenging a goal, it might be a close game. You might want that timeout, like, in the third. I don't know. I just, like, I looking back, it's a Penguins goal that that shouldn't have counted, but it was Josh Archibald scored. I can't remember which team it was against, but it was a couple games ago. But there were literally like 3 things that happened on the sequence that they could have challenged, and 2 of them probably would have gotten the goal back. It was like one, it looked like the puck was played with a high stick before that was missed. That one I'm not quite so sure on. And then Archibald, when he was just before the goal, he tries to put the puck like off the boards and like it bounces up, but the bench door was open. It went into the hinge, which should be like, it wasn't in the bench, but it hit like the open hinge, which would be out of play, and it bounced right back out to him, and he played it. That should take the goal back. And then he it looked like, so the puck, he didn't shoot it. It was a deflection, and it went off his hand, which is fine, but you can't punch it. And it looked like he might have punched it a little. And it was the Islanders. It was the Islanders, and Lane Lambert said after, like, they were looking at all of these things, and eventually, like, they just couldn't, you know, they didn't have a good view of the bench door one. That was the big one. But they were pretty sure, but, you know, they weren't going to risk it because then you go right on the penalty.
Yeah, well, is the onus on the coach to be like, hey, we're challenging for this reason, or is it kind of like you were saying with Sullivan, where he's like, oh, you have to, okay, because I feel like he should be like, hey, we're challenging, and then the league's like, okay, we're going to see if this is a goal or not. So that's crazy that they have to, like,
it would have to be, yes. Well, I feel like, how often is there like a play where there's 4 different reasons?
True, yeah. This is the first time in hockey history.
Yeah, it's Josh Archibald. He hasn't scored in so long. And I talked to him. I went up to Archibald, like, one-on-one after the game. And I specifically asked about the bench door thing. And he's like, well, it didn't actually go like into the door, so they could have challenged it. It's like it could have. It's like the hinge.
They thought about it. You're like, Joshua, do you know what they thought?
Yeah, he's like that wouldn't have come back, and I was like, it probably would have come back if they would have challenged it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's something that benefited the Penguins, just like Matthew Joseph getting the fake eye sticking call. But it's I think you'd want to get the calls right, and I know that
we want to get the calls right, but I think we're also seeing a trend here that the league favors the Penguins. That everyone, we're seeing that as clear as day here.
We should have mentioned at the beginning that you're a Rangers fan. You grew up a Rangers fan. I don't know if you watch. We're recording this on Friday. I don't know if you watched the game on Thursday, but how many power plays did the Penguins get in that game? 0.
Like, hey, yeah, like it's it's in this weird time. There's still like 15 games left. Gary doesn't want everyone to know about the secret that the Penguins get favorable treatment.
It was like a good time we're going to wrap this segment up. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the Penguins for real. So let's just switch with us. Welcome back. And so I'm in New York. The Penguins, they have a 2-game series here. Recording this on Friday. The Penguins practice today. So no update on Jeff Petry. Jeff Petry's still being evaluated. We're gonna talk about that play that injured him, because I've seen Penguins fans mad that there was no call. Like we said, the Penguins didn't get a single power play in that game. I don't think this is an instance of where a penalty was missed. Immediately when I saw it, I was like, okay, elbow, but then no. So what happened was Tyler Mott, he's in the corner, he's making a pass, they collide. His elbow does hit Petry, and it's kind of like the high sticking rule. It's like where it's like intent doesn't matter. You have to be in control of your elbow. But I think we're on the same page here that Petry was
follow through.
Yeah, it's a follow through, and then Petry also was responsible for like the brunt of the collision, was he not?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's a follow through. It's as clear as day. This is anyone that's going to give you grief for this on Twitter and come at you is insane, because like he's also charging in, and like Mott's not that he's in a vulnerable position, but he's in the corner, and you're like, okay, he's gonna do something. You can't just bum rush in there face first. It looked like he was like, okay, I'm gonna he looked like a skier. It was hilarious.
Well, and like it looked like, I mean, it's got to be either it's upper body. That's all we know. It's got to be either concussion or maybe even like I was thinking broken jaw, just because like if you look at where the elbow did make contact. So totally unfortunate. Big loss for the Penguins, just because Petry, I mean, one of their best defensemen on the right, and there's options. I mean, Chad Roydle can get in. You can recall Mark Friedman if you put someone else on long-term IR. But definitely a huge, step back from Jeff Petry. But follow through.
I mean, I think. Yeah, no, it's definitely a follow through. It's not so much the penalty thing. It's just losing Petry. I mean, maybe he doesn't have like as many points this year as he did in Montreal, but he's still. I feel like he produces night after night. Right, he's always creating chances. Yeah,
and I mean a lot of there's a lot of thought that like he should be right now. He's on the second power play unit when he's healthy. Letang's on the first. When Letang was out for a while, Petry was the guy who stepped up, and I mean the Penguins' power play hasn't been great for a while now. It's so streaky, but it felt like it looked better when Petry was on the top unit, just because he was getting so many more shots through than Letang. It seems.
Yep. So, I don't want to take the focus off of Petry, but what's up with Crosby just cranking one-timers from the right side as if he's Alexander Ovechkin lefty? What's going on with that?
I mean, that was his. He had a crazy goal like that against Philly, like one of his better goals. But the one-timers he did clinch. He got his 82nd point with the assist too, so he clinched a point per game season. He cannot fall below a point per game season. It's
that's huge.
18th point per game season. So every year of his career, the only player with more in league history. Wayne Gretzky.
Wayno.
Yeah, big.
Wow.
But you said you have follow-through stories. What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, back to Jeff. Big Jeff Petry here. I I feel bad because also like any kind of mouth injury in hockey is just the worst, because then your gums swell up, like it's harder to talk, like your eyes, everything is just terrible. But funny story, when I was playing in Wheeling, same thing. It's like an empty net. I'm going to shoot, and like I get hooked from behind, and so like on my follow through, there were two guys kind of chasing me, and so like my stick kind of goes flying, and I literally nailed Jack Riley, who was on Reading at the time, in the face, loses his tooth. And then, so funny, at that trade deadline, we both end up going to Rapid City. And so, like, I'm like, oh, hey, man, nice to meet you. He's like, yeah, you could cost me a tooth. And I was like, oh, sorry, man.
Was that the trade deadline where you got traded, like, 4 times in a day?
Yes, thank you for reminding me.
Well, yes. So what's the story with that?
Long story short is the Manchester Monarchs the Wheeling Nailers owed the Manchester Monarchs a player. So like a week before the trade deadline, they claim me. So I'm like, the new guy in Manchester. And then that was kind of when like the Kings weren't doing so well. So the Kings sent down Bokanji Imama and Matt Icapelli down to the coast. And then so we had like all these lefties, and the trade deadline comes up, and okay, like, hey, we've only had you for a little bit. We kind of, we got to move you. So then I actually got traded for this guy, Steven Falkovsky, who was on an NHL contract. He was like a huge Russian D-man. So that was kind of cool. But then I got traded to Allen, and they weren't making playoffs. So then they flipped me again to Fort Wayne. And then Fort Wayne, same thing immediately. They even told my Manchester coach, they're like, yeah, we don't need him. We're going to flip him again. So then I ended up in Rapid City. And I was like, oh my God. I was just like sitting there I would just get a text like every hour, like, oh, you got traded somewhere else. You got traded again. You got traded again.
And you're in Rapid City right now after
full circle.
After your Japanese season ended. So why are you in Rapid City?
Unfortunately, I broke my nose playing. And I kind of think it was this Falkovsky guy, because I broke it when I was playing here in 2019, and when he was on the Allen Americans, and they had like 4 or 5 enormous defensemen like him, Matt Register. Just they're always tough to play against. But yeah, so I broke my nose. I've just kind of been putting it off, and then this year we didn't make playoffs in Japan, so I was like, okay, this is a good time to go to Rapid, spend my 10 days, get this nose nice and pretty. It's like a rite of passage, I think, for a hockey player to just get like a nose job, or not a nose job, but get it fixed.
How did it get broken? Right? Hit?
It was not a follow through, but it was kind of a similar thing with the Jeff Petry. Honestly, yeah, like I was like kind of on the forecheck, and the D like reversed it, and then that guy kind of like reverse hit me, and I was like, whoa! I was just like kind of not expecting it, and just kind of got blown up by one of these ginormous people, and I was like, oh God.
Wow, go out, but it's all better. But speaking of Big Jeffs, Big Jeff Carter has not been great this season, to say the least. Probably problem number 1. And we've been over, like, I feel like every week on this podcast, where they don't have options to move him out, because full no movement clause, you can't send him down, you can't trade him without his consent. I don't think he's going to consent to a trade at this point in his career. He uprooted his family. They're in Pittsburgh. And you just think of the teams that even have the cap space for him. Like a team like Arizona, Jeff Carter going to waive his no movement clause to go to Arizona? No. So we got to stop talking about that. He's also on a 35-plus contract, because his contract is front-loaded, which means if he retires, there's no cap relief. If he retires early, he has a year left on his contract. And then there's 0 cap relief to be gained from a buyout. Like normally, you buy out a player. There's a calculator formula where it's spread out over double the length. It doesn't happen. Nope. If he gets bought out, you can buy him out, but you're still paying him in full next year. It's just like you'd be paying him to go away, which some people say like maybe that's not such a bad thing. But the point is, the only place that Jeff Carter can be moved is to the press box as a healthy scratch. But so we were talking about this before we started recording about like how would that even happen, because you need someone to play center, and the Penguins really don't have a whole lot. Trade
Granlund
seems to be really the best option. So Nick Bonino's hurt right now. When Nick Bonino comes back, maybe we see this happen, because the only guy right now who's not playing center but can play center is Ryan Poehling. Ryan Poehling's on the left wing. Ryan Poehling hasn't been too great at center when he's played center, so I think you'd prefer to keep him on the wing. But when Bonino comes back, that I think, and you could keep Granlund at center and then maybe shift Jeff Carter to wing or put him in the press box. I don't think that's going to happen. But if
I like to think that Jeff has some intangibles. He's a good locker room presence, I'm sure. Calming influence on the ice.
Okay, but see, this is what, the Penguins go out and trade for Nick Bonino. And it's like, did they really need this? And Brian Burke, after, he goes on like the Wilkes-Barre broadcast and he says, he's a good, veteran locker room presence and the intangibles and all that. But this is the oldest team in the league. Do they need, this is not like a team of rookies and Jeff Carter's, keeping them like together.
Focused.
This is a team with Crosby, Malkin, Letang. Gensel and Rust are, they're not young. This is not a team that, like, they need Jeff Carter's veteran presence. But
true.
One big thing that's keeping Jeff Carter in the lineup is his ability to take face-offs and win face-offs. I off the top of my head, I don't know what his numbers are, but it's somewhere around like 58, 59%, which is not a small...
Real good. That's, yeah.
He's like top 10 in the league when you sort... for like when you like add like an ice time, like minimum.
Yeah. I mean, Granlund's 52 at his time in Pittsburgh, so that's pretty good. Yeah,
see, that's the thing, because you bring him in, like they say, like, okay, he can play center, but I feel like they bring him in, they primarily see him as a wing. But but with the Nick Bonino injury, we've seen Granlund have to play center, and he's been good at it, like you said. The face-offs. He had the one game where he was like 12-0, but then he'll have a game like last night. I think he was like 2-8.
And it really just depends. It just depends on the matchup sometimes. Like especially like he's not the biggest guy, so if he's going to win, kind of trying to be quick, like it just depends on who he's going against. But yeah, I mean, I think he would be good up the middle for sure.
Yeah, not the biggest guy. He's a lot smaller than I think I thought he would be. That we were in the locker room, New York, after the morning skate, and he's like going to put his helmet on like the top shelf. He had to climb up onto the stall.
Oh my God.
Maybe he could have gotten on his toes, but it's like just seeing him like get up onto the stall. And I'm like, all right, Granlund's not the biggest guy.
That's hilarious. Are the Penguins just trying to recreate like that HBK line where they just like throw a Euro on the left, Bonino, and then just some kind of North American righty on the right, maybe with Carter? If they still had Kapanen, they could have had an HBK.
In like letter only, but like letters only, but not. I guess
he's not Phil the Thrill. I don't get as thrilled when I watch Kasperi Kapanen on the ice as I did with Big Phil.
I don't think anyone was getting thrilled watching Kapanen towards the end. But yeah, the face-off thing. I mean, yeah, Jeff Carter, like I said, like top 10 in the league, and it's specifically, we've seen him a lot lately where he's the guy they trust in key situations. They started doing this, a couple months ago by now. The Penguins had like 3 games go to overtime in a row. And for most of the season, what the Penguins were doing, you start with Crosby. Crosby starts, he takes the faceoffs. And so they lose this game. I want to say it was the one in Carolina. And I write in my story, like, because the Penguins have been really bad in overtime in general. And I'm going over, like, reasons in my story. And I was like, it would help if they would win a faceoff. Because they have not been doing that. Crosby was, like, 2-8. In 3-3 face-offs, which is just not good. Like, just
not going to cut it.
Yeah, but Jeff Carter at that point, he had been out there for maybe a few, and he was like 5-0, which, I mean, we're talking about very small sample sizes, but Jeff Carter is good at face-offs. And for the next couple games, like, so after I write this, they make a switch, and now every overtime since then, Jeff Carter goes out there. Jeff Carter takes the face-off, but you do not want Jeff Carter out there in 3-on-3 because his legs are totally gone. He takes the face-off, goes right to the bench. And then Crosby, shifts to the center. So,
and this is all because of you and your reporting.
Yes. Mike
You
Sullivan.
could be the next, director of hockey ops. Could you be called maybe? Hockey decision, personnel decision making. Basically, just a GM. You should just be the GM.
General manager. Yeah, I would not have signed
Yeah.
Jeff Carter to this extension in the first place, or at least given him a full no movement clause and front loaded it so you handcuff yourself to him. But but the face-off thing, the fact that they do that, I mean, every overtime, and defensive zone face-offs too, like maybe late in games if it's close, they will send Jeff Carter out there and have him get off as soon as he can. So that's something that is keeping Jeff Carter in the lineup. So if they could have a guy like a Granlund, be good enough at face-offs that he could.
I don't know if you have any metrics or even just viewings of this, but like, have the Penguins been hindered by all the centers being lefty? Like since Bonino and Granlund came over, do they kind of need Carter in the lineup just to take some draws on the right side? Or actually, Crosby kind of snaps them back on the forehand sometimes.
I don't know numbers, but the handedness is something that Sullivan has expressed like a preference for too. So that's another thing that's keeping him in. So
does he play like the last minute of the game? Like, is Jeff Carter out there trying to preserve a lead?
Yes, and that's the thing where it's like, this doesn't make any sense. If you're gonna rip Sullivan for anything, it's like, I don't know why Jeff Carter keeps getting sent out there in some of the situations he is. Like I said, face-offs legitimate, but then there's so many close situations in games where he is out there.
I mean, he's big. I'm from a player perspective. I don't want to rip on any player, especially Jeff Carter. But he's big. He's been there before. Smart player. Maybe it's not going in like it used to. But I think come playoff time, he'll be legit. He'll be dialed in. He'll be ready to go.
Drew O'Connor plays center. That's someone I didn't mention too. But I think I left him out because Mike Sullivan, he's had to play center a couple times. Mike Sullivan has said many times that he prefers Drew at the wing as opposed to center.
He's just such a good forechecker, so fast, gets the puck out. He just has so many positive aspects to his game. He could really play anywhere, but I guess he's best on the wing.
Yeah, I know, and there's really not too many options in the minors as far as call-ups that can play center too. There's Jonathan Gruden, who we saw a little bit, who's he's like a Teddy Bluger light. Honestly, very similar player, but he just missed a ton of time with injury. He only just came back. He didn't get a ton of ice time when he was up. Sam Poulin, one of their best center prospects, but this is a good time to mention this too in the podcast. Talk about this. Poulin, he left the team in December. He left Wilkes-Barre for personal reasons. He only just announced that he was coming back a week ago, and he said it was for mental health. He went home 3 months away from hockey, took care of himself. Now he's coming back, feeling better. He's great at center. He made his NHL debut earlier this season on the Western Canada road trip. That was actually, the trip was awful. Poulin was a bright spot at center. But I wouldn't say he's an option this year just because he hasn't played hockey or practiced. But
true.
We're talking next.
But once Bonino comes back, like you said, if those are your four centers, like Crosby, Malkin, Granlund, Bonino, come on. Now we're talking even better than Matthews, Tavares, O'Reilly. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
Yeah. Quick, just look at the playoff picture before we go. So the Penguins, they're moving kind of back and forth with the Islanders in the two wild card spots in the East. There's 7 different teams really you could consider being in the hunt for those spots, but there is a little bit of a drop off. Yeah. Probably gonna be Penguins and Islanders as the wild card teams. The way the wild card works is the worst wild card team plays the best division, team in the East, regardless of which division. So you could play a team in the Atlantic if you're a wild card, if you're a Metro wild card team.
Yep.
The number 1 seed in the East is going to be Boston. So basically, if you're in that second wild card spot, you're going to play Boston. If you're in the first wild card spot, you're probably either going to play Carolina or New Jersey. They're neck and neck. The Penguins right now, first wild card spot. The Rangers are within reach in that number 3 seed. So things.
Yeah, but
I don't think they're going to beat the Rangers. No. So it's looking like the Penguins. Now they are very close to the Islanders. So their first round, if they don't fall out of the playoffs, which could still happen, disaster could strike. But it's looking like they're going to play either the Bruins, the Devils, or the Hurricanes. And I've seen a bunch of fans say, honestly, I might take the Bruins in the first round. How crazy is just that thought?
I mean, can we first talk about how it's not even just like the Bruins? Okay, whatever. They're a great team. It's fastest team to 100 points. Maybe going to have the all-time best regular season ever, right? They're pretty close to breaking the Red Wings win record. Or no, and Tampa tied it too. So yeah. Like, this is one of the best seasons ever.
Allmark's going to win the Vezina, like without a doubt.
Yeah. Their lines. That check line is crazy with Zacha, what's his face, and Pasternak, Krejci. Yeah. Oh my god.
Well, and like I think what fans, you remember like Tampa getting swept by Columbus when they had their record season, and so I think fans think like, oh, when the teams are this, like the President's Trophy winners, like they're normally pretty bad in the playoffs. No, I think you just remember that. Typically, the teams that are this good in the regular season are actually pretty good in the playoffs too. But you definitely remember when like Tampa swept in the first round. That doesn't mean that's what happens the most.
Well, do you know who was the last team to win the President's Trophy and the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, so that is something that's pretty rare for them to go all the way. I don't know off the top of my head. That doesn't happen.
The Blackhawks 2013.
Yeah, so it's pretty rare. I think there's like the percentage of the President's Trophy winners that actually going to win the cup. It doesn't happen too often. But we're talking about like the first round. What
are the numbers on the President's Trophy winning team winning the first round? Probably like 99%.
Yeah, and the ones like that absolutely choke like the Lightning. You're going to remember that. I mean, the best regular season Penguins team of all time was '93. They did not win the cup. That's just an example.
There you go.
But. Yeah.
And also, I don't like that matchup at all. I don't want Sid, talking with Bergie and Marchand, talking gold medals. I don't want him, I want him focused. I want him to play someone who he doesn't even know. Well, granted, Sidney Crosby probably knows everybody, but you know what I mean.
Friends with Marchand, they skate together.
We can't have that.
I would love to.
I don't want any part of that.
I would love to see Marchand and Jari play each other because you remember what last season.
Oh, actually, that would be kind of cool.
Marchand, he went after Jari, and I remember the fan reaction was like, oh, Jari must have said something really bad to Marchand to have him react that way. Marchand, notoriously very level-headed. And then it comes out in the hearing that all Jari said was, how about that effing save? Very funny. That's all it took. So I would love to see. They haven't played each other a ton since then because what Jari was hurt. We haven't seen like Jari Marchand. Maybe once since then, if at all. I don't know. I
want Jordan Binnington. Get that in order.
I would love to see. So the Penguins don't play the Blues anymore this season. It's such a shame that Mark Friedman was not called up from Wilkes-Barre for either of those games because I don't know how much you've seen Mark Friedman. He's a little unhinged. He's kind of crazy.
I played against him a few times. He was in Waterloo in the USHL when I was in Omaha. So I played against him a fair amount.
Was he like
good player?
A guy that was good at getting under guys' skin?
That was like his MO. Yeah, he thinks he's like an offensive defenseman, but his best thing is the pest. Like he could be a pest for any team.
Oh, he knows that that's his like number one. That's what he's best at. He's just so good at. And when he's been up in the lineup, we see that. I remember when they were in Tampa. Like he's not a big guy. He's not like a tiny guy. But he's going after like the Pat Maroons. It's like he doesn't know how.
Well, he's strong. He's a great skater. That's it. I feel like that's a big part too that people forget. Like when you're in a hockey fight, your edges are so crucial. And he's a great skater, a good hitter. Like he's got good balance. I think he could hold his own.
Yeah, and I just remember, I think I tweeted like, like when in the Penguins, a Binnington game, I was like, if Mark Friedman were up here, he would have single-handedly gotten Binnington to flip his lid and get tossed in the first period.
Yeah, way sooner than the Minnesota.
Yeah, so that's too bad. Hopefully we get a Friedman-Binnington matchup at some point, because I would love to see it.
That would be sick.
He's just so good at that. Friedman.
Yeah, but bottom line, Pens. We don't want the Bruins in the first round. Why am I saying we? The Pens do not want the Bruins first round. But if Pens Carolina, I kind of like the Penguins, or Pens Devils. I think Penguins against anyone in the Metro other than the Rangers. I like their odds.
Yeah, Penguins. I mean, they haven't been great against either of those teams in the regular season, but everything does change. I honestly, at this point, I'd probably say it's the toss-up. Maybe if I'm the Penguins, I would rather see the Hurricanes just knowing who they're missing. Especially
For sure. And the Devils, not a ton of playoff experience. I don't know how much that really factors, but when it's Sid and Hughes one-on-one in the corner for a puck, I know who I'm betting on.
Good point. We've gone really long in this episode. This is probably a good time to wrap it up. Thanks again for joining us. I'll be back at MSG Saturday, where, if those who haven't heard, you scored a penalty shot goal there one time. So
people don't forget.
So stay tuned for that coverage over at DK Pittsburgh Sports. We drop new episodes every Saturday. Podcast on Fifth Ave. Danny's going to be back. I don't know if he's going to be back next week, maybe 2 weeks from now. He's going to be back at some point. We didn't fire him. So thanks again, Alex, for helping out, filling in, and we hope you'll join us next week.